All right, good morning, everyone. Thank you all for being here this morning. I am joined this morning by our city solicitor, Ebony Thompson, and a number of representatives with Everytown for Gun Safety, notably Ala Lefkowitz, Senior Director of Affirmative Litigation at Everytown Law. Everytown for Gun Safety has long been a great partner in the fight to end the epidemic of gun violence in all forms across the entire country. I personally serve as one of the co-chairs of Mayors Against Illegal Guns, which is a part of the national Everytown apparatus. But this morning, I asked them to join me here at Baltimore City Hall because we are embarking on a new partnership together to tackle a challenge that faces us both. But first, let me do as we often do at these press conferences, set the stage by talking about where Baltimore is in regards to violence this year. As of this morning, Baltimore is currently seeing a 20% reduction in homicides and an 8% reduction in non-fatal shootings. As you know, we are on track to see less than 300 homicides in Baltimore for the first time since 2014. That's 9 years if you're counting. This reduction is directly thanks to our comprehensive approach to public safety and work to forge stronger partnerships with organizations like Everytown for Gun Safety and our partners across local, state, and federal government. In terms of the lives saved, this is on track to be the largest single-year reduction in homicides since we started keeping records in Baltimore City. But we all know that one life is one too many. By putting forward the first comprehensive violence prevention plan in Baltimore's history, treating the epidemic of gun violence like the public health crisis we all know it to be, and yes, taking illegal guns off the streets all at the same time, we are using every tool at our disposal to drive this reduction. So far this year, we have seized more than 2,700 guns off the streets of Baltimore, a 9% increase from last year. And as long as guns continue to plague our communities, we must continue to deepen that work. Guns from outside of Baltimore City continue to flood our streets and end up in the hands of those who frankly should not have access to these tools of death and destruction. A huge part of this progress has been our commitment to using data in order to inform our approaches to public safety. And that is why we are here today, because right now we do not have all the data that we need. And without the information to identify specifically where these guns are coming from, we cannot tailor our strategies to address one of the main contributing factors to gun violence in Baltimore. I've said repeatedly that we want to hold everyone responsible for gun violence in our city accountable, from those who pull the trigger to those who supply the weapons, who traffic them, who sell them to people who shouldn't have them. The ATF, our great partners, currently traces the flow of guns from manufacturer to buyer in connection to gun recoveries done by local law enforcement. But due to the NRA-backed Tiahrt Rider, they are not allowed to share this information with local or state officials in charge of policy decisions. So I want to be very clear about that. They can share that with the police department, but BPD, despite being able to get access to this information as a law enforcement partner, is also unable to share it with me, their boss, or any members of my administration or our state's attorney in order to help us devise policies that get at the root of this issue. No mayor in the country should not have access to this information. At the end of the day, residents of Baltimore, St. Louis, New York are going to look at their mayor and want the mayor to act on whoever is helping to supply these guns, no matter where they may be. The current interpretation of the rider impedes our ability to examine the data and use that analysis to go after those gun traffickers, go after those straw purchasers, go after manufacturers, go after dealers who are also sometimes responsible for fueling gun violence in our city. Right now, we're not able to know if there's one gun store responsible for a disproportionate number of the guns flowing into our city, or if there's one area where trafficking guns is more common than others. But we should know, and we should be able to use that information to protect our residents. In an attempt to access this crucial information and target solutions to address the flow of guns into the hands of those driving violence in Baltimore, In September, we submitted a Freedom of Information Act request with ATF to disclose the identity of the top 10 sources of crime guns in Baltimore and the average time to crime for guns recovered in association with homicides and other violent crimes. And for those who don't know, time to crime is the time that it takes for that gun to be bought legally and then be used in a crime. However, the ATF denied our request and cited that the information we were looking for was exempt from disclosure because of the Tiahrt Rider. And I want to again express that this is not about our partners at ATF. We know that they do great work and we work with them each and every day. This is about this Tiahrt Rider that prohibits us from having this information and that should not be so. For me, this was simply unacceptable. And by limiting our ability to deploy effective public safety strategies, this one-off amendment put forward by NRA-backed politicians in Congress is jeopardizing the lives of residents, not just here in Baltimore City, but across these United States of America. In line with our commitment to data-driven policy, the City of Baltimore, represented by Everytown Law and Kramer Levin LLP, has filed a lawsuit to compel ATF's disclosure of this data. We maintain that the ATF decision to withhold this requested information was incorrect, and the Tiahrt Rider does not bar the release of this data under the FOIA as long as the disclosure does not interfere with individual privacy or ongoing criminal investigations. This lawsuit was officially filed yesterday afternoon, and we are awaiting the response. In order to talk through some of the details and the specifics, I will turn it over to our City Solicitor, Ebony Thompson, and then we'll turn it over to Ala from Everytown. Thank you very much. Madam Solicitor.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor, and good morning. Ebony Thompson, Acting City Solicitor. Thank you all for being here. It's an honor to stand next to Mayor Scott in Everytown Law and announce this important lawsuit today. From day one, this administration has been committed to taking on the epidemic of gun violence. In his first month in office, Mayor Scott announced the creation of the Mayor's Office of Neighborhood Safety and Engagement, which is dedicated to the fight against violence and works to ensure accountability across Baltimore's holistic violence reduction strategy. Since then, the administration has launched a host of violence prevention initiatives, including investing in community-based organizations, implementing a group violence reduction strategy, which engages directly with those most intimately involved in and affected by violence, and also implementing a successful summer youth curfew strategy. Mayor Scott's strategy, coupled with the effective implementation by his administration, is yielding remarkable outcomes. As the mayor just noted, we have seized more than 2,700 guns this year. For the first time in nearly a decade, the city is on track to have less than 300 homicides this year. This equates to a reduction in homicides by over 20%, and we're on pace to achieve the largest reduction in homicides in the city's history. This administration understands that public safety is a public health issue. And as with any public health issue, access to accurate and current data is of the utmost importance. And that is why yesterday afternoon, we filed a federal lawsuit against the ATF in the DC District Court. The lawsuit is filed pursuant to FOIA, the Federal Freedom of Information Act, and it alleges that the ATF wrongfully denied the mayor's FOIA requests for access to crime gun data that is relevant to Baltimore City. As you'll hear in more detail from Everytown, as showcased by Allah shortly, crime guns are firearms that are recovered by law enforcement in connection with an investigation. Once the Baltimore Police Department recovers a firearm and submits it to the ATF for tracing requests, the ATF traces the gun from manufacture to sale and determines, among other things, who sold the gun and how long it took the gun to become a crime gun after it was sold. So, for example, if one or two gun stores of the source of a disproportionate number of crime guns being recovered at crime scenes, and those guns are moving from sale to crime very quickly, that is a significant red flag that these gun stores are facilitating illegal gun sales. But bizarrely enough, the city officials who are responsible for making policy decisions to keep their residents safe are kept in the dark about this data. There is no good reason for this. Keeping the data a secret prevents Baltimore and other cities from educating the public about the sources of illegal guns in their communities, and it benefits no one but the gun industry. Our lawsuit argues that the Tiahrt Rider, which is a federal appropriations rider, first passed in 2003, does not mandate this result. The Freedom of Information Act requires that any law that is used to bar the disclosure of data to the public must be crystal clear. And the Tiahrt Rider, which never mentions FOIA, falls far short of this standard. This legal action goes beyond mere access to figures. Our goal is to obtain information crucial for saving lives. The Scott administration's successful strategy, which has produced unprecedented results, motivates our pursuit of this invaluable data. Acquiring such insights will enable us to address gun violence comprehensively. With the administration projected to prevent over 50 families from enduring the tragedy of losing a loved one to gun violence this year, envision the possibilities of leveraging this data now that we've confirmed the effectiveness of the mayor's strategy. Although we've achieved historic results in the reduction of homicides, as long as we have a single senseless death due to gun violence, we will utilize every resource available to us to drive that number lower and save additional lives. We look forward to litigating this case, and I thank you all for your attention. I will now turn it over to Ala Lefkowitz.
Thank you, Solicitor Thompson. It's an honor to be here with you and Mayor Brandon Scott to announce the filing of this important lawsuit. My name is Ala Lefkowitz, and I'm the Senior Director of Affirmative Litigation at Everytown Law, which is the litigation arm of Everytown for gun safety. Everytown is proud to partner with a leader like Mayor Scott, who's not only committed to ending the epidemic of gun violence here in the city of Baltimore, but as co-chair of Mayors Against Illegal Guns, is working alongside mayors across the country to do the same. The Tiahrt Rider is one of the least known but harmful impediments to the goal of gun violence prevention. So let me take a minute to explain exactly what it does. First and foremost, it prevents the ATF from using its congressionally appropriated funds to disclose individualized crime data, otherwise known as trace data, to the public. So, for example, when the Baltimore Police Department or any other local law enforcement recovers a gun at a crime scene, it notes down the make, the model, the serial number of the firearm, and then it submits a trace request to the ATF. The ATF then traces the flow of the gun from manufacturer to distributor and then ultimately to the first retail sale. A successful trace allows the ATF and local law enforcement to know the retail purchaser of the gun, and which may help solve a crime. And on an aggregated basis, it shows trends of how crime guns enter communities. So for example, are one or two gun stores responsible for most of the crime guns in a city? Or is it coming from a more disparate source? Are most crime guns coming from in-state or out-of-state? What are the most popular crime guns? This database is a very powerful tool, and it is made possible by partnerships between local law enforcement agency, who are the ones that are contributing data to the database, and ATF, which is maintaining and processing this data. But the way that the ATF has unfortunately applied the Tiahrt Rider prevents cities from receiving the full and intended benefits of this database. For instance, while, as the mayor said earlier, while police departments may access individualized crime gun data, they are prevented from sharing this data with the rest of the local government, such as mayors, local legislators, city council, and anyone else who's developing the policy in the relevant jurisdiction. However, the Tiahrt Rider does have an exception for the disclosure of aggregated data. Yet ATF has barred police department from even sharing this aggregated data with their colleagues outside of the police department. So according to how the Tiahrt Rider has been interpreted by the ATF, if a police chief knows that the majority of crime guns are coming from one store, that police chief cannot tell the mayor that. But if Baltimore was able to view that data, it would make this information available and transparent to the public, just as it does with other public safety statistics. Baltimore could also use the data to investigate gun stores who are the top sources of crime guns and take legal action if those stores are found to be violating the law. And it is critical to note that studies have shown that gun stores that sell the most crime guns are also the gun stores that unsurprisingly are violating laws. These are the stores that choose to look the other way in the face of an illegal straw sale. These are the ones that misplace guns or neglect to do a background check. They're the ones that forget to do important paperwork. They're the ones that sell guns when they're not supposed to. Imagine any other industry where the worst contributor to public health are permitted to continue operating in secret. In fact, an industry where local officials are not allowed to know the business that is harming their own community. In conclusion, Everytown Law applauds the mayor and the city solicitor for filing this very necessary lawsuit. We need every tool in the toolbox to fight the epidemic of gun violence. The top sources of crime guns should be known, and they should be held accountable. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ala. And now we will go to questions.
Has the city tried for this data before, or maybe has the police department tried for this?
Well, I think the police department has the data, and I think that what I would say is that we got to this point because I made it a point that we wanted to go further with the information. We wanted to make sure that what I say to you guys every week, that we're going to hold everybody in the chain responsible, that we could do that. But we can't do that without the information, even if we know what's true, right? We need the information, and I think it should be very clear about this so that your viewers see this in a plain way. We have to be real and realistic about this, right? There are no gun stores in the city, right? We also know that in Baltimore, I'll just give you some examples of what we're talking about here. So at Hartford and Taylor Avenue, which is literally 25 to 50 feet into Baltimore County, there's a gun store. If there's a gun store right there, that close to Baltimore City, and we've recovered no crime guns from it, but there's one in Waldorf or West Virginia or Atlanta, Georgia, and we required dozens of it from it in a city where people who live in South Baltimore right now can't get to work at McCormick because of public transportation issues. We know that they're not going to those places to buy those guns, right? We have to use common sense. And if it's the same stores and the same buyers over and over, no one's that unlucky that some man who lives in Hampton, Virginia buys 10 guns legally and all 10 of them end up stolen and used in a crime in Baltimore City. No one's that unlucky. And if someone believes that person, people like that are actually victims of crime themselves and they're not helping to fuel gun violence, then I got a spaceship to sell you too.
Where does the police department stand on this? I know there's a police department representative here. The National FOP has said in support of the Tiahrt Amendment that it could, by having it there, it protects undercover officers' investigations from inadvertently being exposed. So where does the police department stand on this?
The police department is in support. The police work for me in Baltimore City. My opinion is we should go this way. They agree. They want to be going after these people as well, right? We're not going to do, you know me very well. You know I'm not going to do anything to let out information that will hurt any investigation. However, we know that there are individuals, there are businesses who are helping to fuel violence in Baltimore City. Right now, we have a 2-year-old child dead, shot at home, right? With a gun we know probably shouldn't have been in that house. What if we have interceded and that gun came from one of these places or one of these traffickers, and we were able to take that person off the street, or we were able to make a case on that specific place a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, a 2-year-old would then be able to live her whole life. And I think that we have to, not just here in Baltimore, across the country, understand that we wouldn't allow this to stand for anything else. I love Quaker Oat cereal bars, right? I got a notice the other day that they might have salmonella in them. So what I had to do, throw them all away immediately, just like that. But we're talking about things that are taking lives off the streets of people all across this country. And you all, right? And this is not about you, but what happens is no one is running to Congress and asking them like, oh my goodness, what are you guys going to do about guns flowing into cities? What are you going to do about guns that are changing hands illegally? What are you going to do about gun traffickers? They are running to mayors. They're running to me. They're running to Mayor Jones in St. Louis. They're running to Mayor Lucas in Kansas City and say, what are you going to do about the flow of illegal guns? And then we have to in turn say to our residents, well, we're not even allowed to see the information. And every single solitary Baltimorean that I've said that to has said that is absolutely the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard, right? We need that to change as well.
Mr. Mayor, to go next to Fox 45.
Go ahead. Alexa, good to see you.
As mayor, for you, is this lawsuit more about access to the crime data in the city's crime fight or more about policy change?
This is about both. Part of the policy change is a part of the crime fight, right? This is about both. We need the data to go after the individuals, but we also need the policy change because it's a stupid policy. It's that simple. Every mayor in the country should be able to have access to the information so that they can make sure and instruct their police department to go as far as necessary.
Go next to Lee from the banner.
Mr. Mayor, if BPD possesses this information and straw purchasing is a crime in Maryland, why can BPD not just investigate straw purchases?
Well, BPD does do that, but there are things that they can't do. And I think this is where we're taking it to the next level, right? BPD does do that. We know we've made those cases. They're going to continue to do that. We go after gun traffickers. However, BPD can't sue anybody without myself and Ebony saying that we can do it. Sometimes this might have to be an actual legal route, and they don't have the ability to do that. And in fact, when you think about it like this, I've had this conversation with everybody from the President of the United States on down. Right? And thinking about it this simply. Imagine the Army or the Navy telling the president, well, sir, we know this information, but we can't tell you. That would never be able to allow to happen, right? The president will say to them simply, give me the information or you're going to have to find another job, right? But if BPD were to tell me this information, ATF could go after them. They could stop sharing information that we need for the daily crime fight, which is why this is about what is happening with this ridiculous amendment and the ruling.
So are you saying, though, that you said the word sue, so are you pursuing more like civil action against these gun stores?
We're pursuing every action, every single action possible. But I'm going to say again, if we were able to have this information in a hypothetical world, right, and we find out that some gun store in some state not known as Maryland is responsible for 30% of the guns that we've recovered over the last X amount of years, we'd be fools to not seek legal action on them because we know that there's something going on there.
Going to go back to David from the banner.
Thank you.
Oh, I didn't even see David back there.
I'd like to ask a question and then follow up with a clarity.
Yes, sir.
Why, short of seeing the information yourself and creating a policy, why can't police make recommendations? Why is that kind of shortchanging the public?
Well, making recommendations would mean that they will be still telling me part of the information, David, right? This is very simple, right? And it's also, let's be very clear. Let's not make this so complicated, right? The guns are recovered by local police. Local police report to mayors. Local mayors are the ones who have to answer the questions about the guns and where they come from and how it got there. But local mayors are not allowed to have that information. We should be allowed to have that information. And this is something that we need to change in this country. It's that simple.
And for clarity's sake, maybe Everytown wants to chime in on this. Is it strictly the interpretation of the ATF, or is it a federal policy that the congressional delegation needs to take a look at?
The Tiahrt Rider itself is a major problem.
Yes.
right? The text of the Tiahrt Rider said that the ATF cannot use its congressionally appropriated funds to disclose this data to the public. So that is the major problem here. But in addition to that, the ATF has unfortunately taken an overly expansive view to not disclose data that even that the Tiahrt Rider does actually allow. So one of the things that I wanted to clarify, and it goes to an earlier question that was asked, is aggregated trace data that is not going to reveal any particular sensitive law enforcement concerns is specifically exempted from the Tiahrt Rider under its text. But ATF unfortunately still does not allow that information to be shared. And to a question that was asked earlier regarding police investigations and regarding any privacy concerns, FOIA itself has those exceptions already built in. So we have not asked for anything like that. So to the extent that that an individual's identity or an actual ongoing sensitive law enforcement investigation is implicated, that data cannot be shared anyway with the public, and it wouldn't be, and of course it wouldn't be shared by anyone for the obvious reasons.
And Dave, just to highlight and note that our great Senator Van Hollen has been one of the leaders on fighting against this amendment. But we all know that this is not about our congressional delegation and whether they understand that this needs to change. This, quite frankly, isn't about whether the president knows and understands this needs to change. But we know there's a lot of people in D.C. right now who, quite frankly, think that the sanctity of American guns are more important than American lives. It's that simple. This is not about our folks. Senator Van Hollen will tell you that he's been fighting on this for years, and he's going to continue to do that, as well as the overwhelming majority of our delegation, with the exception of one.
Jeff,
Is Baltimore the first city to sue for this data? If any other cities have they been successful?
This is the first time in 20 years that someone has done it.
Emily?
As the year is closing out here, there's been a lot of talk about your crime strategy and the effect on the homicide rate. And a lot of times we hear you say that this is because of great partnerships with people, including the ATF. So how do you maintain that partnership with the ATF as you're actively suing them?
Well, this is no surprise, right? And we had the appropriate conversations, and we know that if they were allowed to, I don't think that our partners would not give us this information. This is not, as I said multiple times, this is not solely about ATF. This is about those who would rein them into congressional hearings for sharing information and being ridiculous, not allowing them to do that, but highlighting the issues that we need to work. And we're going to continue to work with our great local ATF partners. I'm sure that work is happening right now as we speak. This is about an issue that, quite frankly, has been allowed to exist for too long, Emily, and that needs to be back on the national stage for everyone to understand what's being prohibited in the fight against gun violence. All right. Thank you. Oh, Emily, sorry.
No, sorry. No, I think everything's been answered.
Thank you, everybody.